On a rainy morning in Manhattan, four heavily deformed luxury supercars arrived at a private garage on a flatbed trailer, their aluminum frames severely twisted. The delivery driver handed Silas Reeve an electronic tablet displaying a direct order signed by the corporate chief executive officer to immediately liquidate the wreckage. Silas wiped grease off his fingers and read the identification chassis stamp on the first vehicle, recognized his own hand-engraved signature from 4 years ago. In a sleek modern penthouse overlooking Central Park, Adriana Whitfield looked at the plunging stock charts, her bright blonde hair tied tightly back in a sharp bun. The corporate board demanded immediate containment of the technical failure, urging Adriana to wipe out all physical evidence before federal regulators could issue a subpoena. Back at the gravel yard, Silas walked slowly around the ruined carbon fiber bodies, his sharp jaw set tight against the cold wind blowing through the open bay. He pulled out an old mechanical blueprint from a locked metal desk, comparing the engineered suspension tolerances with the visibly failed structural components on the cars. In the high-rise tower, Garrett Pell smiled coldly during the executive meeting, assuring the investors that the incident was purely caused by operator error. A black luxury sedan left the Manhattan corporate headquarters, heading directly toward Silas's quiet garage, carrying the corporate leader and her private legal team. The black luxury sedan smoothly entered the gravel lot of Reeve Auto, its premium tires crushing wet stones as Swangmu rolled over the coastal workshop. Two private corporate lawyers stepped out of the vehicle first, adjusting their heavy wool coats while holding a leather portfolio containing strict legal disposal agreements. Adriana Whitfield descended from the rear seat, her striking blonde hair catching the faint gray morning light as her cold blue eyes scanned the industrial perimeter. Silas Reeve stood motionless inside the dark garage bay, a clean grease rag held firmly in his hand, observing the sudden arrival of the corporate elite. Adriana entered the open bay with a confident, measured stride, the sharp heels of her boots clicking heavily against the oil-stained concrete floor. She presented the electronic tablet directly to Silas, her calm voice demanding the immediate structural liquidation of all four deformed vehicle frames without exception. Silas did not touch the tablet, keeping his gaze locked on the corporate leader before asking a sharp, quiet technical question regarding the vehicle suspension flaws. The lead corporate attorney stepped forward aggressively, pointing a finger toward the contract clauses while stating that the facility was compensated only for physical execution. Adriana paused, noticing the precise engineering blueprints laid out neatly on Silas's heavy oak desk, her professional gaze detecting advanced mathematical formulas. Rejecting her lawyer's advice to leave immediately, Adriana extended the deadline by 24 hours, ordering Silas to preserve the mechanical evidence until the following morning. As the luxury sedan accelerated away from the gravel lot, Silas Reeve stood by the entrance, watching the red taillights bleed into the thick coastal fog. Inside his small wooden house adjacent to the workshop, his 8-year-old daughter Hazel sat at the kitchen table, drawing a sleek vehicle with oversized colored pencils. Silas entered the warm kitchen, gently pressing his large hand onto Hazel's shoulder, his rugged face softening as he looked down at her chaotic red sketch. In the quiet house, Silas poured black coffee into a chipped enamel mug, his mind shifting back to the precise structural anomalies uncovered underneath the car tarps. By midnight, Silas returned to the empty garage bay under a single overhead light, locking the heavy iron security chain across the external gates. He systematically pulled the canvas covers off the first luxury wreck, revealing an accordion-like deformation along the front aluminum crossmember. Setting up an unnetworked high-resolution digital camera, Silas began mapping the metallic fracture lines from multiple forensic engineering angles. His calloused fingers adjusted a pair of high-precision digital calipers, measuring the lower control arm housing down to the exact millimeter. The digital screen flickered with a reading showing 0.4 mm out of standard specification, indicating an entirely foreign component substitution. Silas shined a powerful localized inspection lamp onto the hidden side of the bushing, revealing casting marks belonging to a blacklisted Midwestern supplier. At exactly 8 o'clock the following morning, a light coastal rain misted the gravel lot as Adriana's sedan returned to Reeve Auto, this time entirely alone. Silas stood beside a long metal folding table inside the garage bay, where he had meticulously arranged the dissected suspension components of all 4 vehicles. Adriana walked up to the table, her tailored dark charcoal suit contrasting sharply against the cold gray concrete walls of the workshop. Without saying a word, Silas pointed to the 4 defective lower control arm bushings, each illuminated under a bright inspection lamp. Adriana picked up one of the heavy iron components, her delicate fingers turning the metal in the light to inspect the partially ground-off casting marks. Her sharp blue eyes narrowed as she recognized the specific manufacturing logo of Kessler Industries, a supplier her father had blacklisted years ago. Silas laid out his handwritten architectural cross-sections and structural fatigue calculations on the table next to the physical evidence. Adriana stepped outside onto the wet gravel lot, pulling out her secure corporate phone to contact her director of internal audit in Manhattan. She gave a terse, quiet instruction to pull every contract signed by Garrett Pell involving secondary procurement suppliers over the last 4 years. Returning to the shadow of the garage bay, Adriana looked deeply at Silas, whispering that he was far more than an ordinary coastal mechanic. Silas Reeve maintained his stoic composure in the dim garage light, stepping toward the heavy oak desk containing his oldest corporate relics. From a hidden bottom compartment, he withdrew a weathered leather folder and placed it deliberately onto the table before the young executive. Attached to the paper was an original patent assignment agreement for multi-link suspension geometry, completely missing the corporate assignee's final signature. Meanwhile, 60 miles north in Manhattan, Garrett Pell paced inside his high-rise office, receiving an urgent digital warning from his internal mole.
The perimeter has been compromised. Initiate lockdown sequence Gamma, effective immediately. I want eyes on every exit point.
He quickly dialed a covert security contact, ordering an unauthorized transport operation to seize and liquidate the coastal evidence before dawn. Back in the coastal workshop, Adriana traced the unsigned legal documents, realizing her flagship vehicle line relied entirely on Silas's intellectual property. Refusing to allow a forced corporate intervention, she immediately contacted her late father's most trusted private security division. As dusk fell over the bay, 4 dark luxury SUVs arrived at the gravel lot, deploying elite security operators to establish an impenetrable perimeter. Night deepens over the coastal workshop as the private security operators secure the main gates with advanced electronic monitoring equipment. 2 heavy flatbed trucks from Pell's rogue logistical network approach the entrance, their bright halogen headlights cutting through the coastal mist. The lead private security commander steps forward, flashing an official executive directive and a corporate non-disclosure order to halt the convoy. Realizing the perimeter is completely fortified by an elite force, the rogue truck drivers make a tense phone call and slowly reverse out of the gravel turnoff. Inside the quiet office, Silas uses an encrypted satellite phone to contact Jonas Tate, his former lead quality assurance engineer now living in Sausalito. Jonas Tate sits in his converted boathouse laboratory, looking at old archived data streams that were supposedly deleted from the main corporate server. Jonas confirms that he preserved the original factory telemetry from the prototype phase, revealing the precise structural degradation timeline. Silas explains that the 4 crashed cars contain the physical proof needed to validate Jonas's digital records before federal regulators. Jonas Tate initiates a high-fidelity spectrographic analysis on a sample alloy casing Silas had previously dispatched to him. The laboratory monitors flicker to life, mapping out a 38% fatigue life deficit, providing absolute mathematical evidence of the corporate sabotage. The morning sun rose coldly over the Carmel coastline, casting a sharp orange glow over the crashing waves of the Pacific Ocean. A luxury Aurora V12 super sedan drifted unsteadily at 68 miles per hour on the highway, its left front tire alignment suddenly failing. The vehicle slid off the paved shoulder, its front carbon fiber body experiencing structural deformation against a dense stand of cypress trees. Emergency response vehicles arrived at the scene with flashing red and blue lights, securing the perimeter around the damaged luxury vehicle. A passing tourist stopped on the overlook, snapping a clear digital photograph of the fractured left wheel assembly before police blocked the view. Within 90 minutes, the photograph reaches the Associated Press wire service, broadcasting the high-profile mechanical failure globally. On the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, trading monitors flashed red as Whitfield Motors stock dropped 12% in a massive sell-off. Inside the federal regulatory headquarters in Washington, a senior transportation official issued a preliminary inquiry letter regarding the vehicle line. Garrett Pell stood inside his high-rise Manhattan office, watching the financial chaos unfold on the terminal while his collar tightened. Adriana sat inside a private vehicle heading back to the city, receiving a high-priority call from a powerful senator demanding immediate answers. Adriana's luxury sedan pulled up to the Manhattan corporate headquarters under an overcast afternoon sky, its dark-tinted windows reflecting the cold glass tower. She stepped into the grand executive lobby, walking right past the polished bronze bust of her late father without taking a single second to stop. Inside her 42nd-floor corner office, her internal audit director silently handed her a secure silver thumb drive containing recovered archives. Adriana inserted the encrypted drive into her terminal, reviewing the unredacted engineering files Silas Reeve had developed 9 years ago. Garrett Pell entered the office without knocking, spreading his hands confidently while asserting that the Carmel incident was purely caused by driver speeding. Adriana watched his face closely, detecting a slight muscle flicker near his jaw when she firmly requested the live vehicle telemetry streams. Pell hesitated for a fraction of a second, promising to pull the logs immediately before stepping out of the room to make an anxious private call. Once left completely alone, Adriana closed her portfolio, entirely ignoring Pell's deception as she began drafting an official corporate broadcast email. She scheduled an emergency board review for 9:30 tomorrow morning, legally titled, Aurora V12 Safety Review, Attendance Mandatory. At the very bottom of the electronic guest list, she deliberately added a single external name, Silas Reeve, Independent Technical Consultant. The following morning at 8:30, a cold drizzle fell over Manhattan, thick fog completely blurring the upper stories of the Whitfield Tower. Silas Reeve entered the ultra-modern corporate lobby, wearing his washed flannel shirt, worn denim jeans, and heavy work boots while holding a canvas bag. The immaculate white marble floors reflected his heavy, measured steps as he walked directly toward the sleek digital security reception desk. The elegant receptionist stared at him in complete confusion, hesitating to process his external consultant credentials due to his rugged appearance. The premium executive elevator doors slid open, and Adriana stepped out into the lobby, her blonde hair pristine and her tailored suit immaculate. She bypassed security and signed Silas in personally on the digital terminal, entirely ignoring the receptionist's stunned, silent reaction. Together, Silas and Adriana rode the glass executive elevator to the top floor, looking out over the misty Manhattan skyline in absolute silence. Outside the boardroom, the 12 corporate directors gathered in small groups, whispering anxiously about the sudden emergency vehicle safety review. Garrett Pell stood near the large boardroom window, adjusting his premium cufflinks while maintaining his thin, calculated corporate smile to hide his stress. The heavy double doors of the boardroom swung open, and Adriana entered followed by the rugged mechanic, freezing all corporate conversation instantly. The 12 board members sat frozen in their premium leather chairs, their anxious eyes shifting between Adriana and the rugged engineer. The chief financial officer raised an eyebrow in silent disapproval, while two outside directors exchanged a skeptical, hushed glance. Garrett Pell broke the silence with a sharp, mocking laugh, asking aloud if the enterprise was now hiring directly from a body shop. Silas Reeve ignored the corporate insult completely, stepping forward calmly to place his high-end forensic laptop onto the walnut table. Adriana took her position at the absolute head of the table, her voice dropping into a freezing tone as she commanded Pell to sit down. Pell's thin smile vanished as he slowly took his seat, leaning back defensively while Silas flipped open his encrypted machine. The massive ultra-high-definition boardroom display screen flashed to life, casting a cold blue glow over the faces of the silent directors. The digital interface revealed a side-by-side technical comparison of two complex engineering schematics for the vehicle's front suspension geometry. A single critical component on the production schematic, the lower control arm bushing, began flashing sharply in a bold crimson highlight. Silas Reeve spoke in a calm, authoritative architectural tone, detailing the unapproved component substitution that reduced part fatigue life by 38%. Silas Reeve clicked his touchpad, bringing up high-resolution photographs of the physical evidence recovered from his coastal workshop folding table. The boardroom monitors displayed the 4 fractured iron bushings side by side, their partially ground-off casting marks highlighted in sharp forensic detail. Silas triggered the next presentation slide, pulling an unredacted document from the company's internal logistics archives onto the main display. The screen displayed an official change order request form dated 40 months ago, explicitly bearing the corporate signature of Garrett Pell. Beneath the structural file layout, a cost savings memo appeared, detailing a profit margin calculation of $71 saved per vehicle. A magnified view displayed a handwritten margin note next to the pricing column, stating to push it through because Silas would not be reviewing. The entire boardroom dropped into an absolute, suffocating silence as the directors recognized Pell's distinctive architectural ink handwriting. Garrett Pell slammed his hands onto the polished walnut surface, standing up abruptly while his face lost all remaining natural skin color. Pell glared at Silas across the room, aggressively shouting that the presentation was a fabricated setup orchestrated by a disgruntled former line employee. Silas Reeve stood completely unmoved as Pell continued to pant heavily at the other end of the table, his stoic face remaining calm. Silas moved his hand back over the input control device, clicking calmly to advance to the final technical slide of the dossier. The main boardroom screen shifted to display 3 official federal certificates from the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Each document clearly displayed the original multi-link suspension geometry designs, explicitly registered under the personal name of Silas Reeve. The system highlighted the active registration status dates, proving the enterprise had utilized these exact patents for 4 years without a legal transfer. Silas addressed the board in a quiet voice, stating that the company had manufactured vehicles relying on patents it did not legally own. Silas deliberately lowered the high-end forensic laptop lid closed, the sharp slap of metal against plastic echoing across the space. The 12 board directors stared down at their secure electronic tablets, completely frozen as the massive legal liability calculations settled in. Garrett Pell's hand shook violently as he reached into his premium jacket pocket to withdraw his personal encryption mobile device. Garrett Pell pressed the touchscreen frantically, attempting to dial an encrypted outside connection while keeping his back turned toward the window. Adriana Whitfield remained standing at the head of the dark table, her sharp gaze cutting across the room as she calmly uttered a single word to stop him. Pell ignored the verbal warning entirely, holding the device tightly against his ear as the corporate communication grid processed the call. Instantly, the heavy walnut double doors of the boardroom swung open once more, splitting the heavy silence of the corporate executive suite. 2 uniformed corporate security contractors deployed by Adriana stepped into the room, positioning themselves directly adjacent to the exit frame. Realizing his immediate escape route was completely cut off, Pell slowly lowered the active phone device down onto the polished wood surface. Adriana addressed the room with absolute authority, explaining that the transport truck Pell called 4 nights ago had been fully intercepted at the gate. She detailed that the logistics driver was already cooperating with internal corporate investigators, logging all physical evidence into a secure legal archive. Furthermore, she revealed that the transport vehicle contained 2 heavy shipping crates removed from Pell's private office containing historical records. Pell's shoulders dropped as he slowly sank into his leather chair, staring blankly at the dark conference table as his legal defense collapsed. Adriana Whitfield called for an immediate vote on the executive resolution, her clear blue eyes scanning the quiet table of directors. The corporate secretary initiated the secure digital voting system on the main boardroom terminal, displaying the 51% voting ledger control. The chief financial officer moved her hand coat, casting her primary block vote to side with Adriana's corporate restructuring initiative. One by one, the remaining outside directors tapped their terminal screens, registering their anonymous votes to immediately terminate the rogue executive. The digital tracking monitor calculated the parameters instantly, displaying a unanimous resolution for total termination and structural removal. Silas Reeve stood by the workbench display in absolute calm, watching the administrative tribunal conclude without a single flicker of emotion on his rugged face. Garrett Pell stared blankly at the flashing red termination data rows on his terminal, completely realizing his 20-year corporate career was permanently erased. Adriana raised her hand slightly, giving a silent, final instruction to the two private security contractors waiting near the exit frame. The uniform operators stepped forward calmly, placing their hands firmly on Pell's premium navy pinstripe suit shoulders to guide him out. Garrett Pell left the corporate boardroom between the guards, the heavy walnut double doors swinging shut behind him to lock in the executive transition. Adriana sat down at the head of the boardroom table, the atmosphere shifting into cold, clinical crisis execution. She ordered an immediate forensic audit of the past 4 fiscal years, sliding the financial directives to the chief financial officer. Adriana commanded the legal team to self-report all engineering discrepancies to federal transportation regulators before the close of business. The main boardroom monitors displayed a massive public draft announcement for a complete voluntary recall of all Aurora V12 supercars. The chief financial officer scanned the balance sheet, calculating the massive reserve funds required to absorb the worldwide product recall. Adriana finalized the specific financial allocation on her screen, assigning an emergency reserve of $60 to $80 million. The chief financial officer warned that the corporate stock valuation would drop another 15% upon the public announcement. Adriana responded with absolute icy resolve, stating the company would not survive any other path but total transparency. Turning toward her encrypted ledger interface, Adriana authorized an immediate multi-million-dollar wire transfer settlement to the independent consultant. The screen displayed the exact itemized transaction totaling $2,700,000, settling the unauthorized patent usage. Saturday morning in Half Moon Bay was cool and bright, the thick coastal fog finally lifting from the quiet gravel yard. He analyzed the forged alloy joint under a specialized electronic scanning microscope, verifying absolute structural purity with 0 microscopic microcracks. In the adjacent kitchen, Silas flipped golden pancakes on a hot iron skillet, a relaxed look appearing on his rugged face. Hazel sat at the wooden counter, her light brown hair in a crooked ponytail as she watched her father prepare breakfast. Outside, the garage yard appeared much larger and quieter, the 4 wrecked supercars having been transferred to a federal evidence facility. Just past noon, a black luxury sedan turned smoothly into the gravel lot, its premium tires crushing the dry stones.
The structural integrity of the West Wing is paramount, Silas. We can't proceed without your sign-off. I understand, but the foundation needs reinforcing before winter.
She held 2 paper cups of coffee from a local bakery, stopping at the edge of the lot as if waiting for an invitation. Silas stepped out onto the rustic wooden porch outside his office, watching her arrive with a calm, relaxed posture. Adriana walked forward across the stones, the cold corporate tension of Manhattan replaced by a quiet, mutual understanding. Adriana stepped onto the weathered wooden porch, handing one of the warm paper coffee cups directly to Silas. Silas accepted the coffee with a quiet nod, gesturing toward the empty space on the rustic wooden step beside him. Adriana sat down smoothly on the step, her flat leather boots settling into the loose gravel as she adjusted her posture. Inside the open kitchen window, Hazel looked out curiously, holding her new drawing while waving brightly at the visitor. Adriana looked back at the young girl and smiled warmly, her icy corporate armor completely dissolving in the morning sun. Turning back to Silas, Adriana reached into her bag and placed a single white envelope on the wooden step between them. She explained that the envelope contained a formal offer for a completely independent research and development division based on the coast. Under the proposed terms, Silas would direct all engineering operations, reporting exclusively to Adriana without any relocation requirements. She firmly emphasized that all current and future automotive patents would remain legally registered under his personal name. Silas looked down at the white envelope resting on the weathered timber, processing the absolute professional freedom he was being offered. Silas lifted his enamel mug, taking a slow sip of coffee while staring out across the empty coastal lot. He looked back at Adriana, his rugged voice completely calm as he stated that he would think about the offer. Adriana nodded in respectful acceptance, stating that she did not expect an answer today or even this month. She rose slowly from the rustic wooden porch step, her flat leather boots settling firmly into the loose stones. Standing in the light Pacific breeze, she gently brushed a few loose pieces of gravel off her jeans. Silas added quietly without looking up that she should stop by next week because Hazel was making cookies. Adriana paused mid-stride on the gravel path, a genuine look of surprised delight appearing on her sharp face. She turned back slightly and nodded softly, accepting the informal invitation with absolute sincerity. Adriana walked across the sunlit yard toward her luxury black sedan, her stride completely relaxed and unhurried. Silas watched the loose dust settle as she opened her car door, knowing 4 ruined cars had found the only man who could red them. 1 month later, a sleek brushed steel sign reading, Reeve Advanced Dynamics was mounted next to the rustic coastal workshop. Inside the newly expanded high-tech bay, Silas studied a glowing blue 3-dimensional schematic of a next-generation suspension assembly. His calloused fingers calibrated a professional stress-testing rig, simulating extreme cornering forces on a redesigned titanium bushing component. Hazel sat safely in a modern glass-walled study area within the facility, contentedly assembling an advanced mechanical scale car model. Meanwhile in Manhattan, a group of hostile minority shareholders gathered secretly in a dim high-rise club room, plotting administrative challenges against Adriana. A bitter corporate ally of the indicted Garrett Pell reviewed an injunction draft, attempting to block the new coastal research funding. Adriana stood calmly in her executive suite, looking out at the rainy New York harbor while her logistics director summarized the threat. She completely dismissed the dissident board members, immediately signing a fast-track capital release to deliver heavy manufacturing infrastructure to Silas. Back at the coastal facility, a heavy logistical transport vehicle arrived, unloading advanced automated CNC prototyping mills onto the clean concrete. Silas observed the advanced industrial machinery settling into place, his sharp gaze fixed on the tight federal safety verification deadline. On the 7th day of the federal countdown, Silas worked late into the night, welding the redesigned control arm under an intense shower of sparks. Meanwhile in Manhattan, the hostile dissident shareholders officially filed their court injunction paperwork to freeze the corporation's emergency capital. Adriana entered a high-stakes federal courtroom for the emergency hearing, her sharp posture and intense blue eyes radiating unyielding confidence. Her legal team presented the sealed forensic procurement dossier directly to the judge, explicitly exposing Pell's historical engineering fraud records. The federal judge reviewed the unredacted audit proof and slammed his gavel down, immediately dismissing the hostile minority shareholders' injunction. Back at the coastal R&D hub on day 12, a federal transportation inspector mounted calibrated testing sensors onto the prototype vehicle. The heavy structural testing rig accelerated the suspension axle to maximum dynamic simulation velocity, replicating extreme high-speed cornering load. The telemetry monitors processed millions of real-time structural data points, the physical stress lines remaining completely stable in bright green. The federal official finalized the official compliance report, stamping the Master Safety Certification seal to validate the new vehicle line. Adriana stood confidently behind a luxury black marble podium inside the packed corporate media hall, multiple cameras flashing intensely. She officially announced the successful conclusion of the federal safety investigation, presenting the signed compliance validation certificate to the press. The large presentation displays revealed the new standard titanium suspension architecture, explicitly citing the engineering work of Reeve Advanced Dynamics. On the trading floors, market monitors updated rapidly as Whitfield Motors stock rebounded 22% in a massive recovery rally. The defeated dissident shareholders watched the unprecedented financial surge from their private office terminals, their administrative mutiny completely shattered. Back at the coastal facility, Silas quietly watched the televised corporate press conference broadcast on a small wall monitor inside his bay. A premium courier vehicle entered the gravel lot, delivering a personalized copy of the executive decree and a finalized royalty distribution statement. In Manhattan, Adriana reconvened the Executive Board Council, securing a permanent corporate funding allocation for the Half Moon Bay operation. The chief financial officer confirmed a massive surge in premium international vehicle orders following the absolute safety verification disclosure. The master corporate compliance filings were transmitted globally, completely restoring the automotive empire's premium financial market standing. Another Saturday morning in Half Moon Bay was cool and calm, a refreshing light wind moving gently off the Pacific Ocean. Silas Reeve sat on the weathered wooden porch step outside his office, drinking black coffee from his favorite chipped enamel mug. Hazel set up a small camp table in the shade of a large eucalyptus tree, carefully placing homemade cookies onto a white ceramic plate. Just past noon, a black luxury sedan rolled quietly onto the loose gravel lot, its pristine panels reflecting the bright coastal sun. Adriana stepped out of the private vehicle alone, wearing a comfortable dark charcoal sweater and flat boots without any corporate entourage. She walked slowly toward the porch step, carrying no legal files or business portfolios, holding only a warm smile on her face. Hazel jumped down from her wooden bench and ran excitedly toward the visitor, proudly holding out her latest colorful pencil drawing. Adriana knelt down on the loose gravel to accept the child's artwork, tracing the vibrant pencil lines with an affectionate finger. The child's sketch displayed a sleek red two-seater supercar with no roof, containing two stick figures labeled Dad and Her. Adriana slipped the drawing carefully into her coat pocket, looking up at Silas with absolute sincerity and profound professional respect. Silas Reeve extended his open hand downward from the wooden step, slowly helping Adriana stand up from the loose gravel lot. Adriana accepted his hand with a firm grip, stepping up onto the rustic timber porch as the light ocean breeze swept around them. Silas gave a soft, rare nod of definitive confirmation, officially accepting the Sovereign Coastal R&D leadership proposal. Hazel clapped her hands happily from her camp bench, pointing toward the white plate filled with homemade chocolate chip cookies.